Here with us now is National Institute founder and executive director Jamil Jaffer. Jamil, nice to see you today. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me on, Anna.
So what does Netanyahu's visit to America mean amid the possibility of resuming major combat operations there with Iran?
Well, it's obviously an important visit. Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Trump have generally seen eye to eye in this conflict. They've both been wanting to take the fight to Iran to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear program or nuclear weapons. And there have been divisions at times about whether Israel should continue its attacks in Lebanon to fight Hezbollah and the like. And so President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu are likely to have a robust conversation about all the issues going on in the Middle East, including whether and how to continue to take the fight to Iran as they continue to block the Strait of Hormuz.
All right, and with 2 nights of no strikes after military action intensifying for a couple of weeks, what does that say to you?
Well, it's a great question. The question is, are there ongoing negotiations right now to address the issue? The core issue at stake is, will Iran allow the freedom of navigation through the Strait of Hormuz, allow all those ships that are stocked up there with oil and gas waiting to get out of the region? You know, they've been saying for months that they're willing to open the strait. President Trump has negotiated with them on that basis. But of course, they haven't been willing to do that. They've been attacking commercial ships mercilessly. And so the question now for President Trump is, has he put enough pressure on Iran yet? Or does he need to go to major operations against Iran, which he said he's willing to do, but hasn't done yet? We've seen now a 2-day pause and what's been a 13-day campaign responding to Iran's aggression against commercial shipping.
So how much more intense would it get? What would the targets be?
Well, a lot of the key targets are these coastal defense radars, these very capabilities that they're using there at the strait to prevent ships from getting through. They're targeting these ships, both small boats and with missiles and with drones. All those are controlled by radar systems and installations there at that choke point. And so taking a lot of that out, as well as going further after the IRGC's forces around the region and inside of Iran, is critical. And remember, you've also got the Houthis now, Iran-backed rebels in Yemen, trying to control that Bab al-Mandeb, that choke point there at the Red Sea as well. So this is happening on 2 fronts now. The U.S. has got to fight Iran. And the key point behind this, though, Anna, is it's all Tehran behind all these efforts.
Well, and talk a little bit about that as well. You know, we can't forget, of course, we hear the Secretary of War, we hear President Trump talking about how Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Nobody in the U.S. wants them to have a nuclear weapon. But you also hear them talking about Iran being the largest state sponsor of terror. And with the Houthis now getting involved, some analysts I've spoken with have said they believe that gives Iran some leverage for looking down the track. What do you think?
Well, Anna, that's exactly right. But the problem is Iran has always had that leverage. They're just seeking to exert it now. I think the main point that we have to emphasize here is that Iran is the world's largest state supporter of terrorism. They've supported Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, and the like around the globe for decades. We've got to take them, shut them down, and prevent them from supporting terrorism. We can't be giving them money as part of a deal. We can't be allowing them to have nuclear enrichment domestically like President Obama did. President Trump is considering that as part of this deal with Iran to end the war. That should be totally unacceptable. He decried it when it was part of the Obama deal. He should not allow it to happen now. And the same thing with support of terror, giving them tremendous amounts of money, the same pallets of cash that President Trump rightly attacked the Obama administration for doing. He's now considering that should be unacceptable. The bottom line is, if it required taking the fight to the Iranians even more straightforwardly and forcing the Strait of Hormuz open, that's what we need to do. We need to lower gas prices, but the answer to that is not doing a bad deal with the Iranians.
While you're here, can I just get you to weigh in on the breaking news that we've had out of Berlin? Again, I'll just highlight this. We mentioned at the top there, a major manhunt underway as police search for the suspect who drove a van into a Berlin pride party. This just happening overnight. And authorities have identified the suspect as a man with ties to Islamic groups. Several victims were reportedly stabbed there as well. Again, we're monitoring this press conference there, and we'll bring you details on that for everybody watching at home. But can you just weigh in on this and the gravity of this situation? You know, we don't have any evidence that this is anything tied to Iran, but you do know that the Iranian regime would like to spread radical Islamic terror, around the region and across the globe in a lot of respects. And they do chant things like death to America. And it's not just a war against the U.S., it's against the West in a lot of ways as well. What do you think about this?
Well, look, Anna, we don't know exactly what happened. What we know is the cars crashed into a crowd of people, at least one person, maybe a few more dead, a number injured. It sounds like there may have been reports of stabbings as well. This is obviously deeply troubling. We've seen attacks like this before. Obviously, we remember the Pulse nightclub in the United States and Florida. We've seen attacks like this in Europe as well, when radicals of any variety, but in this case, it may have been associated with the Islamic State, perhaps Iran-backed terrorist groups. We don't know for sure. And we don't know for sure this was a terrorist attack, but certainly there appear to be some connections between the driver and what took place. And so as this plays out, we'll learn a lot more. But of course, this is exactly the challenge we have, is that this is, as you say, Anna, a war not just against the United States, but a war against the West. Our friends in Europe have to remember that when we're talking about what's happening in Iran, what's happening in the region, and what's happening with these terrorist groups. And by the way, we've taken our eye off the ball in a significant way with the Islamic State and al-Qaeda. There's a former al-Qaeda leader now in charge of Syria. That's hugely problematic. And these are things we got to keep our eye on, because if we don't watch out, they will continue to prop their heads up, just like we see with Iran. Al-Qaeda continues to want to attack the United States and the West. So we need to keep an eye on this and go after these terrorist groups wherever they reside.
Yeah, an attack on our values, on Western values. I want you to react as well to Secretary of State Marco Rubio. This is what he said to reporters about a deal with Iran. He said this at the end of last week. Listen.
Iran is begging us. Okay, both directly and indirectly. Let's do a deal. Let's talk. Iran is begging every day. The problem with Iran is every time they make a deal, the people that are in charge there, they either break it or they want to change it. So it looks like they're not ready to make a deal.
It is so hard for Americans to figure out what's really happening. And of course, there's all kinds of classified information, and we all have to recognize that. But when you hear the president, you hear the Secretary of State saying different things. You know, the president has said one day he'll say that Iran is begging for a deal. And then, a day later or 2 days later, he says the exact opposite. He says that they're not ready and they're not acting like they're ready. And then they're begging. So which one is it? Or is this all part of the art of the deal?
Well, the president has a unique way of negotiating, and I think it's different than most people. He does things that people don't expect. We never thought the U.S. would attack Iran's nuclear sites. We never thought the U.S. would kill Qasem Soleimani like happened in the first term of the Trump administration. So we've seen this president do radical things. At the same time, it's also clear that he's wanted to get out of this war for a while now. He's sort of tired of it, and he's concerned about high gas prices, as he should be. But the answer to that, and is not a bad deal with the Iranians, as Secretary Rubio rightly says, people who will not stick to a deal. The better way to do it is to force the Strait of Hormuz open, push ships through there, and dare the Iranians to attack us. And then if they do, wipe out all their forces that engage in that attack. And that's the right way to do it. It's what President Reagan did back in the 80s. It's what President Trump should do now. He's got to have the guts to stand behind it. It's clear Secretary of State Rubio is talking about exactly those things, but there's a divide in the administration between Vice President Vance on one side, Secretary Rubio on the other. So far, Secretary Rubio has had the upper hand, but every so often you see those who want to cut a deal with Iran, who want to negotiate, like Vice President Vance, who went there to negotiate a deal with Iran, a deal ultimately that was a bad deal for America and that President Trump should never have entered into. And hopefully now we're out of, because the Iranians have demonstrated that they won't back the deal.
Yeah, well, look, we thought this was going to be a few weeks. That's what we were told, and we're now entering 5 months. Jamil Jaffer, National Security Institute founder and executive director, thank you for joining us. Thanks.
Thanks, Anna.